Of course, before any American soldiers were able to fight in World War I, the United States had to get troops and supplies to Europe. The costs of such an operation were staggering. To raise money and get the resources needed, the United States government implemented extraordinary measures. First, the federal government took control of the economy and gave the president the power to fix prices and regulate certain war-related industries. President Wilson next established the War Industries Board and appointed millionaire financial expert Bernard Baruch to head it. Wilson often called him Dr. Facts because of his ability to assemble, coordinate, and distribute details about war materials and production.
Every man has a right to be wrong in his opinions, but no man has a right to wrong in his facts.
No detail, however seemingly trivial, escaped his scrutiny. Baruch noticed that 8,000 tons of steel were used each year to make ladies' corsets. He asked American women to give up that fashion in support of the war. They did, and the steel saved could be employed to build 2 battleships. The board encouraged companies to use mass production techniques to increase efficiency and eliminate waste. It also established price controls, allocated raw materials, and told manufacturers what they needed to produce in order to help the war effort. As a result, industrial production increased by 20%. Other government agencies controlled the railroads, regulated the use of coal and oil, and mediated labor disputes, avoiding crippling strikes. The War Industries Board also created a massive publicity campaign, encouraging the public to contribute to the war effort by planting victory gardens and observing meatless meals, so food could be sent overseas to the troops. Gasless Sundays and lightless nights soon followed.
My Tuesdays are meatless. My Wednesdays are wheatless. I'm getting more eatless every day.
In order to conserve energy, the War Industries Board even adopted an idea first championed by Benjamin Franklin: daylight savings time, to take advantage of the longer days of summer and use less electricity. And finally, to raise the $33 billion cost of the war, the government took 2 actions. First, it established an excess profits or war profits tax on corporate earnings and higher income taxes on wealthier citizens. Taxes were raised on tobacco, liquor, and luxury goods as well. These actions collected about 1/3 of the money needed. The rest was raised by appealing to Americans' strong sense of patriotism. Liberty bonds were sold. These, in essence, loaned money to the government to fight the war. Movie stars and newspapers, parades and billboards all carried the message to buy bonds. Amazingly, on average, every adult American lent the war effort about $400, a large amount at the time. Even with the money necessary to fight the war, the government realized they would need the popular support of Americans, most of whom had been either neutral or openly against involvement. Therefore, President Wilson appointed a former muckraking journalist, George Creel, to head the Committee on Public Information, our nation's first propaganda agency. Creel was a giant when it came to advertising and public relations. He called his committee the world's greatest adventure in advertising. Creel convinced the best writers, artists, musicians, and advertising people of the day to help him sell the war. From booklets and books for Americans in various languages to anti-government propaganda messages for our enemies. Creel even got into the movie business with features such as Under 4 Flags, with the help of famous film director D.W. Griffith. These pro-war movies were not only hits, they actually made money for the cause: $852,744. Remarkable when you realize that it only cost a nickel to see a movie back then. Simply put, Creel helped make an unpopular war popular. His masterstroke was the creation of a national force of 75,000 men who would deliver a patriotic 4-minute speech anytime, anywhere. The 4-minute men spoke on the draft, rationing, bond drives, and victory gardens. By the end of the war, they had delivered more than 7.5 million speeches to 314 million listeners. Musicians gave voice to the war. Songs like Till We Meet Again, It's a long, long way to Tipperary. Keep the home fires burning, and over there, kept American spirits high. Meanwhile, the immense task of transporting troops to France began. After years of relying on foreign vessels to take American goods overseas, America's supply of ships was limited. Consequently, shipyard workers were exempt from the draft or given deferments to make shipbuilding a priority industry. A new construction technique called fabrication, a process by which parts were built elsewhere and then assembled in a central shipyard, substantially reduced the time needed to build ships. The system worked and worked well. In a single day, appropriately the 4th of July, 1918, America launched 95 ships. Rear Admiral William S. Sims decided that the best way to get troops and supplies safely past the German U-boats was to use a convoy system. That meant that merchant and troop transport ships would cross the Atlantic in large groups, escorted by a guard of heavily armed destroyers and cruisers circling the fleet. The plan cut shipping losses in half. 100 submarine chaser boats and 500 airplanes were also used to stop U-boats from sinking ships bound for Europe. Remarkably, of the 2 million men who sailed to Europe during the war, only 100 were lost to U-boat torpedoes.